Have you ever felt that chilling presence in a room, even when you are completely alone? The kind that makes your heartbeat skip, your skin crawl, and every shadow feel alive? Tonight, I'm going to share with you some of the most terrifying incidents people have actually experienced. Real events, real fear. And by the end of this video, you might never feel completely safe in your own home again. It all began when my cousin decided to take a weekend trip to a remote forest. He had heard rumors about an old cabin deep in the woods, abandoned for decades. Locals avoided it, whispering that strange things happened there, but he was curious and thought it was just superstition. On the first night, as he settled in the cabin, the atmosphere felt heavier than normal. The air was cold, despite the summer heat, and the silence was almost suffocating. Around midnight, he heard a soft tapping on the wooden walls. At first, he assumed it was the wind, but the sound was rhythmic, deliberate, almost like footsteps. He froze, listening carefully. The tapping grew louder, moving across the cabin, circling him. Then, a whisper barely audible but chilling called his name. "Why are you here?" it said. He dropped his flashlight, which flickered and then went out, plunging him into darkness. Heart pounding, he tried to convince himself it was his imagination. He remembered the stories his father had told him about spirits that lingered in places of tragedy, but he had never believed them. Now the thought seemed very real. Summoning courage, he grabbed a candle and lit it. The flickering light revealed shadows moving across the walls, twisting unnaturally, as if the cabin itself were alive. The whispering continued, now accompanied by soft, dragging footsteps. He could feel someone or something watching him from the corner of the room. Suddenly, a cold hand touched his shoulder. He spun around, but no one was there. Panic surged. He ran outside, stumbling in the dark forest, but the shadows seemed to follow him. In the distance, the cabin appeared as if untouched, silent, almost inviting him back. He didn't stop running until he reached the main road at dawn, gasping for breath. When he looked back, the cabin was gone, replaced by a clearing he was sure had not been there before. Even now, he says he can hear faint whispers whenever he passes that forest. He never speaks of the cabin again, but sometimes, in the dead of night, he wakes up to the sound of tapping on his bedroom walls. And he knows it's never really left him. Story 2, The Old Manor. This story was shared with me by one of my closest friends. It happened many years ago, long before smartphones and social media, when his grandfather still owned an old manor on the outskirts of a quiet town. The manor had stood for over a century, with rumors of strange occurrences whispered by neighbors for generations. My friend, as a teenager, often visited his grandfather there, unaware of the terrifying secrets hidden behind its walls. One summer evening, my friend and his grandfather were going through the dusty attic. The air was thick with the smell of old wood and forgotten belongings. As they moved an old wardrobe, they uncovered a narrow staircase that spiraled down into darkness, completely hidden from the main house. Curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to explore. The stairs creaked with every step, and the air grew colder the deeper they went. At the bottom, they discovered a small, candle-lit room, though no one had been there in decades. The walls were lined with faded portraits of previous owners, their eyes seeming to follow them. On a table in the center, a journal lay open, its pages yellowed and fragile. As they flipped through it, they realized it belonged to an ancestor who had vanished mysteriously over 100 years ago. The journal recounted chilling details of nightly visitors, shadowy figures who whispered in the dark and dragged the living into the manor's hidden corridors. Suddenly, a distant, low growl echoed through the stone passages. My friend's grandfather dismissed it as rats, but the hairs on my friend's arms stood up. Shadows began flickering against the walls, moving independently of the candlelight. They felt a presence behind them, breathing heavily, though no one was there. Panic rose, but curiosity rooted them in place. Then, from the darkest corner of the room, a shadow detached itself from the wall. It had the shape of a man, but its face was twisted and distorted. Like a nightmare come to life, the shadow whispered his grandfather's name. Clearly aware of who he was, though no one else had entered the manor. My friend tried to pull him back, but his grandfather seemed frozen, staring into the figure's hollow eyes. In that moment, time seemed to stretch. The room grew impossibly cold, and a sense of malevolence filled the air. Suddenly, the shadow lunged, vanishing just as it reached them. The candle blew out, and the room was swallowed by darkness. They ran up the stairs, tripping over decades of dust and debris. Once outside, the night air felt warm and almost forgiving, yet the manor loomed silently behind them, as if nothing had happened. My friend swore that even years later, whenever he returned to visit, he could feel the shadow's eyes on him. At night, he sometimes dreams of the candle-lit attic, hearing whispers that echo across the empty corridors of a place that should have been long forgotten. Even now, he refuses to speak of what truly happened in that hidden room. And his grandfather? He never returned to the attic again. Some say the manor still holds secrets that no living soul should uncover, waiting for the next curious pair to descend into its darkness. Story 3. The midnight email. It all started one rainy evening when I received an email from a stranger. The subject line read, "You need to know what happened to me." Intrigued, I opened it, only to find a detailed account of a horrifying event that had left the sender shaken for years. According to the email, the incident occurred in their family home, an old house passed down through generations. The sender explained that the story had never been shared publicly, but they trusted me to narrate it accurately. The story began one stormy night, when the sender's father was away on a business trip. They were alone in the house, trying to catch up on some work while the rain hammered against the windows. Around midnight, they received a knock on the door. Confused, they looked through the peephole but saw no one. Shrugging it off, they went back to their desk. Moments later,
The shadows
knocking
whispered
returned,
secrets that night,
louder, more
and I couldn't
insistent.
look away.
When they finally opened the door, the hallway was empty, with only a faint, cold mist lingering near the entrance. Thinking it was their imagination, the sender tried to focus on their work, but strange things began to happen. The lights flickered, and the computer screen flashed images they didn't recognize, shadowy figures standing in corners, staring. Then, a whisper came from the other room. "You shouldn't be here alone." Heart pounding, they ran to check, but no one was there. Every door in the house seemed to creak open by itself, even though the house had been locked tight. The most terrifying moment came when they found a photograph of their family on the dining table. Except everyone's faces were scratched out, except one. Their father's. And behind him, a shadowy figure that had never been in the family photo before, standing motionless, its eyes black voids. When they turned to look around the room, the figure was gone. Panicked, the sender called their father, but the line was dead. The knocking returned, this time coming from inside the house, circling them. They ran to a bedroom and locked the door, trying to stay quiet. Then, the whispering began again, this time naming them personally, recounting memories and private thoughts that no stranger should know. The realization hit, they were not alone. Something inside the house was aware of every detail of their life. At one point, they decided to flee the house, grabbing the keys and running into the stormy night. But the front door slammed shut behind them before they could exit. They had to break a window to escape, cutting their hands in the process. Once outside, soaked and trembling, they dared a glance back. The house seemed normal again, as if nothing had happened. But from one upper window, a figure stood watching them, a tall, dark silhouette, unmoving, silent, and utterly terrifying. Weeks later, the sender received another email from an unknown address. It contained just one line, "You left something behind." Since then, they have moved homes, changed numbers, even left their town, but the nightmares continue. Shadows and empty rooms, whispers when they're alone, and the sense of being watched never leave them. They confessed in their email that they still cannot sleep without a light on, and some nights, they feel the figure standing just at the foot of their bed. This email ended with a chilling note. I'm sharing this because I know you will understand, and because one day you might be the next to hear from me. Reading it, I couldn't shake the feeling that even as I closed my inbox, something unseen lingered in the room with me. Something patient, something waiting.